Good afternoon. I hope you are doing well after the lunch. Nice to be here. Today I would like to speak about data integration platform, implementation and validation challenges. My name is Grzegorz Janczewski and I work for Bio company. I know that my name is difficult to pronounce, so my non-Polish speaking friends call me Greg. If you call me Greg, you will be my friends too. First joke, good. Okay, data integration platform. A big project at Bio company. Today, you will hear a couple of words about Bio company, data-driven organization, challenges and reality that we have during this project, good practices and solution, and at the end, Kneat Gx user experience, as we are using in GX. First, Bio. Bio is an end-to-end contract development manufacturing organization. This is a brand that belongs to Polish company, Polpharma Biologics. And Bio can offer cell line development, drug product development, clinical and commercial drug substance manufacturing, drug substance process development, analytical capabilities, drug product manufacturing, and supporting processes. We have two sites in Poland. One at the seaside in Gdańsk, here. This is the Clinical Development and Manufacturing Center. The other one, next to Warsaw, it's a commercial scale GMP manufacturing. Those are new facilities. Both are FDA and EMEA approved. So we are capable to produce as you wish, if you wish. Okay, short disclaimer from the legal department. I think they would like to be here, but they do not have tickets. So this presentation is intended solely for information and training purpose. And the content of this presentation is not intended to constitute legal or professional advice and should not be relied upon as such. Okay, let's go to the next one. Now let's talk about data-driven organization. Why data-driven? Let's take a look at the current situation at the market for CDMO. Contract development manufacturing organization market is growing. We know that. So as the number of competitors, there is money, right? Clients, they expect more and they expect faster. Budgets are small, but the workload is growing. Staying competitive requires effort, requires data-driven organization by removing data access barriers, by increasing cross-organizational data visibility, and preparing for the era of artificial intelligence. We've seen yesterday during the presentation from the neuroscientist, Benjamin, right? And also a couple of examples from Kneat about AI agents that can help us with the validation process. Artificial intelligence, new technology, it is here. It is coming. We need to prepare to use it efficiently. What is the idea at Bio? How to do it? Data integration platform. We have decided to create a data integration platform, entire solution that will help us to manage data. And the first business case is the ongoing process verification report. A very heavy manual process that takes time, consumes a lot of time and energy, and you want to do it in an automatical way, right? Then you would like to implement some digital operations, electronic batch record as another enhancement, advanced data analysis, and those will help us in process optimization. At the end, we would like to achieve something which is called like enable data for our clients. So this is something like customer data hub, because we are CDMO, we work with customers. We want to show them the data on our side because the data belongs to our customers about their product, right? Okay, let's go a little bit deeper into the data integration platform. What is it? That's an entire solution. That's a system with the infrastructure and the application layer. And this system was designed to collect data from data source systems that are working in silos. Collect them, store them, protect them, contextualize, process to deliver valuable information at the end to business user. For example, operation analytics and reporting, predictive maintenance, financial planning, and so on and so on. There are many, many different ideas how to use it. Let's go even deeper to the architecture. You will see architecture diagram very simple. Virtual infrastructure as the first one. We decided to create it in-house using virtual infrastructure. Maybe it's not something new, but for us, it was new. Data acquisition. We need to collect the data from the data source systems. So data acquisition process was a must, the first step, and we decided to create custom software for that. Then data processing, how to process the data, the core element of the system. It was built from open source software, many of them. That's a group of tools working together. And data reporting, another custom software that was created to deliver data to our end users. It looks simple. Okay, let's go to the point number 3. Challenges and reality. Virtual infrastructure. That's a challenge. Challenge for us because we have never used virtual infrastructure in such a big scale. It was some small project with that, but not as a large system. Another challenge, open source software. Have you ever used open source software for the GMP data processing? It's not a common solution, right? That's another challenge, how to do it and how to validate it. Then custom software. Another challenge, like we are a biopharmaceutical company. We produce drugs, right? Not a software. How to develop a software and then validate it. Another challenge, software development and validation. You see this circle because software development is not linear anymore. There are no linear models to software development, not in use. People use agile. People use incremental models. And the challenge is here that our validation process is based on waterfall. And how to combine that together, that's a challenge. Risk assessment and risk management, because this is like completely new solution for us. With new technology, we need to manage the risk, a new risk that is there, that we were not aware about many of them at the very beginning. How to manage that? Another challenge, source code. We are not software development company. We do not manage source code, not in a large scale. For some small applications, right? Part of the application, some local configuration. Yes, there is. We even have a paper form for source code review. Nice, right? Paper. 7, testing. A big solution, and we need to do a proper testing. How not to kill the project, how not to over-test and still deliver the value and still have the validated system. Data integrity. We will process a lot of data, and we need to ensure data integrity and manage the data in the organization. In the end, supplier involvement. till this day, our cooperation with supplier was quite simple. We went to buy and use, right? But not this time. We had to find a supplier that will help us to create the entire solution. Okay, now let's go to the point number 4, good practices and solutions. In this point, you will see a couple of good practices from GAMP 5, a couple of regulations, and the final solution that we created. Virtual infrastructure. Okay, let's find out what we can find in good practices. GAMP, IT Infrastructure Control Compliance, Appendix 12. Infrastructure platforms and components may be qualified. Hooray! Yes, we can do it. We can qualify virtual infrastructure. That's perfect. As long as properly specified, verified, controlled, and maintained. Risks are unique to the virtual environment, specific risk assessment to be conducted. Okay? Procedures should be specific to the virtual environment. And altogether, it looks quite similar as for classic infrastructure. So, should be easy, right? What we did? Initial risk assessment for the virtual infrastructure. Complexity and GXP impact was assessed, as for any other infrastructure. Information security risk analysis. Potential vulnerabilities. They were identified and addressed. User requirements. 20 requirements were added to the user requirements specification, specifically for the virtual infrastructure. Specifications. Data platform infrastructure specification, that's one, and another, data platform infrastructure deployment specification, because virtual infrastructure is a code that needs to be deployed from the repository to the real physical infrastructure. And to work properly, it needs to be done properly, predefine it. Therefore, we have specification for the deployment of that infrastructure. And maintenance process, restore and disaster recovery, change and patch management, access management, all of that specifically for virtual infrastructure. Okay, next challenge. Open source software. What we can find in guidebooks. Commercial software may contain open source. Are you surprised? Evaluation of open source software is similar to purchased one. A risk assessment should be performed to determine the business and GXP risk, implemented in accordance with appropriate life cycle activities as for commercial software. That's a very good news. There is no other process for open source. That's the same process, exactly the same. So what we did, functional risk assessment, risk assessed for every open source software that we used. Specification, each open source software is specified and configured. Version control, installed on-prem, patches are fully under control. Vulnerability, open source software not exposed to the internet, each was assessed by information security team. And in the end, testing, very important, limited to the intended use of the open source software. Those tools can do many different things, but we would like to use them for a very specific process. So the specific use was tested, the intended use, not everything, right? And appropriate to the results of the functional risk assessment. Okay, another challenge, custom software. What can we find in guidebooks? Agile is not a reason to accept the lower level of quality. Then for agile, testing is always performed. User must ensure system is fit for intended use. Evidence may be in tools and supporting systems. So, what we did? The same as always. Nothing new here. That's the same. User requirements, plan, functional risk assessment, specification, DQ, IQ, OQ, PQ, report. So where's the difference? The difference is in the approach to that. Let's go to Annex 11. For the validation of bespoke or customized computerized system, there should be a process in place that ensures a formal assessment. Should be a process. What kind of process? It's not written here. Annex 15. Validation activities should only be performed by personnel who follow approved procedures. We should have procedures for validation. What kind of procedures? It's not written here. Verification of the correct installation against predefined criteria, right? Before we do any testing, we need to have predefined criteria for that. So specification, user requirements, there must be point in the time that something is approved. So what we did? Development, it was running together with the creation of user requirements, as for Agile, right? You know Scrum methodology. It works this way. And then system specification, FRA, test strategy, test creation, validation plan, it was constantly updated, upgraded, till the time we were sure that, yes, it's good enough. We completed the development together with creation of requirements. Then we had some time to complete specifications and complete functional risk assessment and to complete the test strategy to create test cases that were not created till this time yet, some additional, then approve it, and then do the classic DQ, IQ, OQ, PQ. Is it Agile? Of course it's not, but it's good enough to work with Agile, right? Well, the first part on the left, a bit Agile. On the right, classic waterfall, linear. It works, at least for us. Okay, another risk. Risk assessment and risk management. Okay, there is like information in GAM5, the two ways to use categories. And in this system, we have all the possible categories, like category 1, category 3, 4, and 5, all together mixed. And we can use it in the whole system assessment, and we can use it in the functional risk assessment. For the whole system assessment, that's quite obvious. I think we all do that. For the functional risk assessment, it's not so obvious. And there is information in the guidebook that when increasing the risk of failure occurrence from standard to custom software and increasing the risk of failure detection from standard to custom software. What does it mean? So when there is a standard functionality, the risk might be lower, and where is the custom functionality, the risk will be higher, both for occurrence and for detection. We use that. What we did? Category 3, standard solution. The risk, and that's an additional rule for our FRA, the risk should not be high. We are going to use a standard functionality, even from the open source software. It's a standard, it's working, right? Already. So should not be high, maybe low, maybe medium, but rather not high. Category 4, the starting point, okay, medium, let's take a look. Maybe it's easy, so could be low. Maybe it's a very difficult configuration, should be high. And the category 5, custom-made software, the risk for both for occurrence and for detection should not be low. Rather not. Rather justify that we did some previous testing, verification, then maybe. But starting point, high, maybe medium. Okay. Another solution, challenge, source code. What can we find in guidebooks? The source code review should be performed by at least one independent person. Critical thinking, M12. Information and test evidence in the form of artifacts have the same status as formal documentation. Then D9. Tools supporting IT process are category 1. Such tools should not be subject to validation. FDA encouraged the use of software lifecycle management tools, and tools should have sufficient controls. Very useful information. How to use it? How we use that? Okay, we used all the code is managed in Microsoft Azure DevOps. For us, it was a new thing. Also for our IT guys, those are managed code, because like we didn't have to manage code till now. Now we do. And we did that in Azure, code management, code review, and code approval, without the paper form for review the code, as we do for other small systems. And we created code review good practice document to have it done properly, right? And to show that we have this process under control. Okay, another challenge, testing. GAMP 5, testing of computerized system. Testing may take place in different environments: development, formal testing, operational. The test environment needs to be functionally equivalent to be representative, and no benefit to repeat testing already performed in another environment. Very important sentence. How we use that? Okay, environments. We have 4 environments: development environment, we have test environment, we have QA for formal testing, and production environment. For the test environment, we did dry runs, including installation qualification in that environment. So under control. We track the results and we track the defects from that environment. And we created at the end development testing report that is attached to our functional risk assessment to show, hey, we did already some testing, we have an evidence here, the risk is mitigated. Quality assurance environment, the formal testing. No formal testing for low-risk functionalities when tested already previously. We do not repeat testing from the test environment because it was already done, right? For low risk. Let's focus on the data integrity and data security, because there is the pain point. There is a risk, real risk. And we used unscripted testing for everything and limited scripted testing for those with high risk or complex test scenario. You may ask, why not fully scripted? Because the people, the developers, the people from our vendor, they create that system. They are subject matter expert. They know everything about that. Why they should have a very scripted test case to follow? They have everything already in heads, right? So they need a couple of instructions for the high-risk functionalities to show them, guys, this thing needs to be tested in a very specific way, and you know the rest, all the clicking, because you have already created that. Okay, data integrity. Annex 11. If data are transferred to another data format or system, validation should include checks that data are not altered in value and or meaning during this migration process. And that's the way how the data flows in our system. Data acquisition on the left, there is some structured data, semi-structured data, unstructured data from the source system. They need to be transferred to the bronze layer. This is the layer for the raw data. Then once again transferred to silver layer to standardized for some cleaning, then transfer again to be aggregated and contextualized, and then transfer again to end users to deliver valuable information. How to take care about data integrity here in those places? Every time we transfer data, we need to check what was before, what was after, like the source and the target each time. And more, mapping of the data. We need to know how the data flows in the system from the starting point to the end and back. if the inspector will ask, how do you know that this data is the correct one coming from the correct source? Yes, we know it because we have mapping. Okay, but data integrity and data management, that's not only the control points and mapping. It's much more. Here, you will see a couple of standards for data integrity. There is for MHRA, World Health Organization, PICS, FDA, EMEA, ISPE, and a new one for me, DAMA, Data Management Book of Knowledge. And this one is for data management in the organization at all. What we did? I noticed that the data integrity and data management should be managed at least in those three levels: system, process, and company. What does it mean? For the company, how to do it? For the company, we have created a new unit in the IT department, Data Intelligence and Data Platforms, to manage the data. You may ask, why in the IT? Information technology. We have technology to manage the data that can deliver information. IT is the right place to create such a unit. Process. Data policy and procedures. We noticed that our procedures and policies, they need to be upgraded. And the project is running to make changes. System. You have already seen that. Data flow mapping, control points. That's the system level. Okay. 9, the last challenge in this presentation, supplier involvement. You know this picture, GAM5, second edition. And at the bottom, there is supplier involvement, the knowledge, where it should go. That's the theory. What is the reality, at least in our case? That is the reality. Our supplier, like they help us to create everything. Requirement specification, functional specification, design, all the testing, even the user acceptance testing, all of that was created together with the vendor. Okay. Takeaways. That's not the end of the presentation. That's takeaways that I noticed for myself during this project. I want to share it with you. Maybe it will be useful also for you. Regulations do not limit your validation process. Your procedures do. Because in regulations, you do not have information how to validate specifically. A risk management validation approach is crucial for custom software and for open source software. You are not alone. Your supplier can provide significant support. Right? Like the regulated organization does not need to take care about everything. Of course, the responsibility is on us. But that doesn't mean that we need to do everything. Data integrity, data management must be ensured at the system, process, and company levels. Okay, and now time for the last point, Kneat Gx user experience. We are using Kneat Gx since the middle of 2024. It was implemented. The beginnings were very, very difficult and slow. It is implemented in the IT department only for CSV process. And we use that for this project to create specification, user requirement specification, and we started in SharePoint. Why? Because it was easy and very well-known environment for us and for the vendor, right? They didn't want to learn a new system to create documentation. We preferred them to focus on the job, to create the system and use the SharePoint because it was easy already known, right? So the beginning was there, and then we moved those documentation using the import from Word to review, to corrections, and for approval. FRA, created in Excel. And I regret not using entities for that. I cannot yet, because it is not explained in our procedures how to do that. But the initiative is already running, and entities will be allowed to use in the next month. And I'm very happy. I decided to do it. That was my initiative. And yesterday, I've seen presentation from Dan in Kneat. Yes, Dan is there. And there will be possibility to transfer the classic requirements in the documentation into entities. So once this new feature will be available, I will transfer all of that into entities. Traceability. Kneat Gx is a useful tool to create requirements traceability. But we made a mistake. We decided at the beginning of the project to create a specification with functional, design, and configuration specification in a one document. That was a good idea. It was working till now for all the paper documentation. And we created 16 those documents, right? For 16 different modules of the entire platform. And that was the mistake. Because when you have requirements, functional, design, and configuration in a one document, the traceability is working when it's in draft. But once you approve it, the traceability is gone. This is not the mistake of the Kneat Gx. This is mistake of like our mistake. The Kneat Gx is working very well. And we decided, then we had to change it, like split it. Functional as a separate document, and then design and configuration in a separate document. And now it works perfect. And that was not a big effort, thanks to Kneat functionality. It was less than a week to do it. RTM, fully generated in Kneat Gx, and when it was generated first time, that was more than 1,200 rows. And I'm glad I didn't have to do that manually. Test cases, created in SharePoint. Why, you may ask? Because they were created from the very beginning of the project, together with requirements, together with system development in SharePoint in the easy environment for our vendor, and then transferred to Kneat Gx. Review and approval. Very efficient, users were satisfied. License, user license consumption. When you invite your vendor, you need to pay for the license, right? There is a number of people, like 10 people working on the project, they need to have license. A challenge, but there is a very nice functionality, active, inactive switch. So I could easily manage the license. When you need it, you are active. When you don't need it, you are not active, right? Very, very easy. You may ask where there is no testing here, like test results, execution, because the project is running. Like today, we have approved the FRA. So the next week, we are starting with testing. User experience, positive for both standard users and for review and approvers. They were really satisfied that using Kneat, comparing to the previous project, previous methodology on paper, or maybe using external tools, or like the EDMS classic, this one is better. And they like it. Okay, and that's it. It's time for your questions. Question.
Thank you for the presentation. I have two questions. One is, what is the difference between dev and testing application? Should I repeat or?
If you don't mind.
Okay. So thank you for your presentation. I have two questions. What is the difference between dev and test environment?
Okay, dev and test environment, yep.
Because you have dev test and then
yes,
QA
dev,
and prod.
Dev for creation, software creation. That's a sandpit, you can name it, like a playground for developers. Then they have very first stable environment testing. once it's worked in testing, it can be moved to the formal testing environment, which we called quality assurance environment. Then we have the formal testing in that environment, and then we can say, okay, validated, let's go to production.
So that means that the testing environment and QA are identical.
No, they are not identical.
What is the difference?
The difference is in the resources supporting, like, not the same number of memory, not the same number of processors, power, not exactly the same configuration. This is the very first stable environment to verify if the new functionality already developed, does it work, right? And work with other already developed.
Okay, thank you. And my second question is about unscripted and limited scripted test cases. What does it mean, limited?
Limited,
for you?
okay.
Because we are used to have this step-by-step execution test cases.
Yes. We all used to use the step-by-step test cases with a clear explanation of what to do, which button need to be pressed, and so on. Limited scripted means that instead of 20 or maybe 30 test steps, you have 4 or 5 with a very general approach. Okay, in this step you need to achieve that and verify that. In this step you need to achieve that, but the exact instruction is not needed because subject matter expert, they know how to do it. So I don't need to tell them, go to the right top and press the button. No, just please perform this action, approve the document, right? And they know how to do it, how to approve.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Do we have time for one more question, if there's any there? Oh.
So I have a question, how long does it take? Like, when did you start? I know that you still didn't finish, yeah? You're still in progress of, like,
Yes.
validation. So how long does it take, the whole process until now?
The first idea to build that system, like it appeared at the end of the 2024. Then we decided, okay, let's find appropriate vendor, right? And the real work, like, it was started in the second quarter of 2025, right? And now we are in the second quarter of 2026, so right now a year, right? And we are starting the testing at the moment, which I think it's quite quick, at least for us.
In go live?
At the quarter 3, 4 of this year. Yep. One more question.
Are you using test automation tools and yes, which tools?
Yes, there are some test automation tools, not for formal testing, rather for the development phase of testing and for installation verification. There is the automation. To verify the functionalities of the system, still we have the manual testing. It's nice to have it's quite nice to have automated testing. I like it a lot. However, there is a big effort to create those automated test cases and then to maintain it. So we prefer to focus on create the system with manual test cases. Once we know that, okay, it's there, it's ready, then we can automate some of the test cases, some part, to make our life easier in the future, right? But not at the beginning.
Thanks so much, Greg. I think we're all friends now, so thanks, Greg.
Yeah, thank you.